all-century team ring, by the way. Pac-10, Pac-12 now.
That's not a ring.
These are not real diamonds, by the way.
That's brass knuckles.
Was
dude.
Chris Henderson? He's a UCLA guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he's
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if he made the all-century team. But... Respect to the guy.
You realize we recorded all that, right?
Don't do that.
Oh, perfect.
This man played in the World Cup. You got to give it up.
Oh, from New York, you are listening to Extratime, driven by Continental from my spare bedroom in Brooklyn. I'm Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, Matt Doyle, Kalen Carr, David Goss, Chris Henderson, legend, coming up on this show for some story time. The youngest player at the 90 World Cup, going to help us with the greatest team of all time bracket. So now you know to stick around.
Starts with a New York City flex. I have more than one bedroom. Wow.
Well, it's for my incoming child, Dave. Wow. It's not like I just get to do whatever I want in here. It's only a podcasting room for the time being.
Wow.
So
do we directly, I assume, what did we say the kid's name was? Dempsey Obafemi, whatever we had already decided on, I think, on the show. So we've already named
Obadeuce would have to be the one. I mean,
we had already named the child, I believe.
Did we?
Stepchild. Yeah, I think we did.
Huh.
Yeah.
Right.
We're thinking about naming him after a guy named Ohmsberg. Wyatt Ohmsberg. Boom. That's the MLS connection.
If your child if his name is not, or her name is not decided by... Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes.
It's not decided by a Twitter poll. I'm going to be very disappointed.
I would assume it has to be a former Miami Fusion player. That's my assumption.
I'm looking forward to the best 11 names column by Andrew Wiebe.
That's actually, you know what? That's a good idea. That one's written strictly for one person, Bobby Warshaw. That's just for Bobby Warshaw. Although, by the way, did Leo Cullen play for Miami Fusion, or was he Tampa Bay Mutiny?
No, he did.
No, he was
perfect, because we're thinking about Leo too.
Huh?
Not after Lionel Messi, after Leo Cullen. That's the way my brain works. All right, guys, let's give people a little hint of what's coming here before we jump into it, because there is some news about return to play. The Athletic Sam Stejskal and Washington Post Stephen Goff have been all over this one, and we'll kind of run down what's going on and maybe get a quick opinion. Still, we know about as much as all of you do at home. Still uncertain times, still TBDs, still it seems like plans in the we'll see what happens mode, but things are moving ahead. We're going to have the Doyle drink recommendation of the day. Did you do your research, Doyle? Do you have one for us?
He doesn't need to do research. He lives the research.
Yeah, what are you drinking right now? Yeah, that's probably the question.
I'm drinking water right now, but I do have a drink of the day, yeah.
Okay, we'll get to that one. Of course, this is Heineken Rivalry Week at MLS, MLSsoccer.com, MLS Remix on Friday, 4 p.m., YouTube and Facebook. Seattle, Portland, otherwise known as the number 2 rivalry in Major League Soccer right now. Just messing with you out there. I did rank it number 2, but it is Dave and Kalen and some fans from Seattle and Portland. So check that one out. ESPN, Fox Sports, all these different partners of MLS where you watched games before. They're running old rivalry matches. So check MLSsoccer.com for all those listings. I've enjoyed those. I spent last night about 3 hours tuning into those, and my wife was like, why? And I was like, soccer? I miss it. And she's like, okay, fine. And just turned away and read a book. So let's get into it. Return to play. Here's what Stejskal and Goff are reporting. MLS is considering having all 26 teams play in Orlando.
Goff reporting, Stejskal rumors.
Good point.
Just on to make sure we're still on our midseason form.
Right. I'd forgotten all about that, but now I'm reminded. Purportedly mainly at the Disney Wide World of Sports complex, which if you're an MLS fan, you're well familiar with from preseasons past and the All-Star game last year, the skills competition, yada, yada. These would be competitive closed-door matches. Teams would travel out there in June, quarantined. Basically, it'd kind of be like a bubble situation. First, you start with individual training, then you go small groups, then you go full training sessions, and then the games start, and you'd have some sort of tournament format. Does this pique your interest? Are you guys thinking, oh, yeah, give me that. I'll take that. I need this live soccer in my life. Like, what would be interesting to you in this scenario? What would kind of get your brain moving? What would you feel good about? Obviously, the key here is health, and MLS and everybody involved will have to make sure those I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But I don't think we should speculate about any of that. I think it's more the competitive side. Anybody have thoughts, or is it just so ephemeral that you're like, I can't imagine it till I see it?
It's kind of where I am. I mean, it's obviously going to be a different kind of season no matter what everyone decides. So if that means a tournament at Disney World, okay. At this point, as long as it's as safe as possible, which obviously that's going to be the number one priority, then all right, tournament in Disney World in summer. Let's do it. And I'm sure the players are itching to get out there as well. But we're talking a month and a half away, and a lot of things can change. A lot of things have changed in the past month and a half. So for now, it's just kind of like, let's just get through the next day. Let's get through the next hour of this podcast and pick it up from there.
Yeah, mix your cocktail, drink it, and whatever happens on the other side is still to be determined in some ways. I mean, I think it's interesting because we've already seen the gap in training. Certain teams, depending on what market they're in, they're already back to an individual work on the field, and you talk to players and hear from players, and they're saying, hey, maybe I thought I could stay fit on my own in isolation, but that just wasn't the case. So you have different levels of fitness coming in, different levels of, like sharpness, of course. I wonder what, say, Joseph Martinez is doing right now to rehab and how that works and how it would work. But you're talking about a gargantuan effort to get a group of hundreds of people in a safe environment in Orlando to play this tournament. I know that I would tune in. I know that I would enjoy it if it happened. But I'm kind of like you, Doyle, in that in my personal life and in my professional life right now, I can't see past about right here. Like, if you're not watching on YouTube, my hand is directly in front of my face. Like, I just can't.
And in front of the microphone. You probably heard that.
That's a good point. That's also, I'm very professional when it comes to these at-home recordings. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Kaylin, Dave, any thoughts? We just see what happens.
Yeah. Kaylin, for you, if someone proposes to you when you were playing, what would have been your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, well, look, I know the guys want to get back out there playing, and that's everyone does. The big challenge has been part of the challenge has been that we span two countries, and across like the distance has been so difficult. And that was a challenge always with MLS, was just the amount of travel that you would have to incur as a player and how that affected the games. And now it's like everyone's in, we already had all these different sets of circumstances, whether you're playing in different environments or different cultures or regions or languages or whatever. And now it's like that those differences have been magnified based on, the different circumstances that people are going through right now and where they are in the world. So the idea makes a lot of sense, is to try and get everybody into one place. And so you then are in a similar circumstance where you can try and just, I guess I had former coaches of mine used to always say, like, focus on what you can control. And there's a lot out of our control right now. So I think the idea of trying to create an environment where you can control as much as possible who gets in, who gets out, namely really nobody, and just really quarantine everybody together, gives us a chance. And I am hopeful about that. So I think my main thing is, as long as we're going about it in a safe way that looks at it for the health of the players, the health of the people that are going to be involved, all the people that will be involved in this sort of comeback to play, that's got to be priority number one. So that's the most important thing to keep in mind. And but yeah, I would love to see it if we can get there. But yeah, it's like you guys are saying, every 2 days I see something on Twitter, whether it's with the Bundesliga and we're waiting to figure out how that's all going to go. You have to put kind of one foot in front of the other, but it's a big idea for sure. It's a big idea. And I think that's what it would take right now, it seems like.
Just like everybody else, we'll keep our nose down and just see what comes out. What's the information? What's the official stance from Major League Soccer? And go day by day. That's all we can really do at this point. In the meantime, we're digging into history, of course, having fun.
We do know that Doyle stayed match fit. And if players have lost fitness and Doyle stayed, this might be the best chance we can to get Doyle on the field. So we do have to consider that.
I did break both of my feet 4 months ago, so you're probably not going to get me out in the field.
At once.
Yeah. Is this the time to share that story, or we keep that one?
Oh, no, we're keeping that one. That's all people get. That's all.
I just want to say, I was talking to my brother-in-law. speaking of fitness, and he was like, man, very fit guy, works out every day, like gym rat. And he was like, I've gained 9 pounds. And I was like, well, you certainly don't look it. And he's like, how are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm exactly the same weight I was before, which maybe tells you a lot about my activity level before and during, which is kind of a shameful thing. So like now I feel like I have to lose weight just to prove that I have some semblance of self-discipline.
I've amped mine up because I watch my girlfriend work out once a day. So it went from not working out and not being around it to watching someone do it once a day. So it's a
little bit creepy too. The way you phrase that, that's good.
Well, I mean, the flip side is I got all this.
Is the other people on the Zoom just hanging out, yelling at each other to push it harder and all that stuff. I'm just in the corner.
Maybe I'll use my spare bedroom for some workouts. Meanwhile, Dave, if he lays down, his head and his feet touch both walls.
Wow.
I don't even know what that means.
Just messing. Okay, that's enough for us. Let's get to Chris Henderson and get his memories. All right, we've really enjoyed getting some perspective on the past, but we can also get some on the present with Chris Henderson, the vice president of soccer for the Seattle Sounders. He is much more than that, though. Of course, he was the youngest player at the '90 World Cup, played for a number of great teams in this league over the years. We've talked about him on this show through the Mount Rushmore series, through the greatest teams of all time. Chris, welcome to the show. Beautiful, beautiful chandelier. I just have to start out by saying that.
Thank you. That's my wife chose that. So it's kind of a spot where I don't get disturbed from my kids, but it's great to be here with you guys. I enjoy your show. Fun to watch, and the banter back and forth is entertaining.
Lucky for you to have that spot. I'm still looking for one of those. If somebody breaks in behind me, you'll see the door open. It'll be my son, Cameron. Let's just get started here. We want to use your perspective, both on the teams you've been on, but the teams that you've built here and competed against, to help us better make decisions in Extratime's greatest team of all time bracket. We're trying to narrow it all down to the greatest team of all time. It's been difficult. It's been heart-wrenching at times. I still feel bad about that Fire Red Bulls decision. But let's start before that, way before. Let's go back to pre-1990. You were the youngest player on that first World Cup for the U.S. Tell us the story about how you got involved, what it meant at that time, what the team was like. Like, just take us down memory lane.
Wow, it feels like another lifetime ago for sure. It was a long time back, but it was a time where us getting into the World Cup was such a big deal after 40 years of being out, and that group of players, mostly college players or just out of college. I would say we were a bit naive going into to play Italy, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and really we didn't at that time. There was no video really to watch. We were going into the World Cup like, all right, let's play our game and let's see what they come with. I mean, it was really limited in the amount of preparation you could do leading into that World Cup. And, just being there with that group of guys and being the youngest player and, walking out in Olympic Stadium when we played against Italy and seeing all the guys that I had posters on the wall in my dorm in UCLA, Donadoni and Vialli, and that team was amazing. I think knowing that we had a chance to host the '94 World Cup, it was really important that group qualified. And it wasn't like in '94, we just were the host team, you get in the World Cup. And I think the growth from that 90 team to '94 was monumental. Like that group of players and training every day together in residency was pretty amazing. So great memories. I look at the highlights of '90 being the youngest and then missing out, in the last minute on the next two World Cup teams. So it's kind of highs and lows with the national team.
Who was the guy in that group for the Americans on that squad that you were impressed by in training? Who was the best player? Who stood out?
Tab Ramos had the most technique, skill, explosiveness. I remember we were in Florence. The team was training at a military base because of the Gulf War and the protection around the team. And I remember thinking, okay, I got Tab. He's dribbling at me. And I think I'm going to channel him and just give him this gap, and then I could step in and tackle. And before I knew it, he had blown by me and I couldn't even grab him. Like, his acceleration was just incredible off a stop start. and the way he can control the ball. And then there was Peter Vermes, who I was always close with in teams, his leadership. Wijnaldum was young coming through there. So many players. Desmond Armstrong was a good leader. And then Gansler was my coach for the '89 Youth World Cup, where we lost in the semifinals to Nigeria, an overage Nigeria. So I had experience with that coaching staff, Ralph Perez, Gansler. So it was a great experience, great memories.
Bob Gansler, one of the classic interviews here on Extra Time.
We
Our
love
soccer
Bob
grandpa.
Gansler.
He will always be our soccer grandpa. You said naive, and I've heard a lot of guys on that team say that. Did you have a feel for how important it was? Did you have a feel for sort of the perspective and the historical nature of it? And how did that manifest itself? Because I'm thinking back to myself at 19, college. I may not have had that. And it may have been hard to have that, given that the U.S. just hadn't been there in so long. Yeah,
I think there's something at that age where you're coming through where you think you're invincible and you think you can do anything. And, when I got into games, I'm like, give me the ball. I want to take players on and dribble and get crosses in. And I think it's a strength sometimes when you don't know what you don't know. And obviously looking back, you make decisions and you don't know until years later when you look back whether they ended up being good or bad decisions. And so I think I had a little bit of that maybe cocky nature and confidence. And like I said, at that point, it isn't like today. You can watch any game anywhere in the world. At that time, it was really hard to see games on a consistent basis and look at the top players around the world. We kind of just saw what we had in the United States at the time.
What did you, when did you know? When did you, like the moment in the game, the moment in warm-ups, the moment beforehand? I mean, you had the posters in the dorm room. When did you know, like, oh, these guys are a different level?
Well, the first game when we walked out against Czechoslovakia, when I looked over at Skarabi and their whole team, I mean, just the physical nature, their whole team was giant and they were thick and strong. And then I looked at our team and I'm like, oh, we look thin. We look like, we look like kids. And I saw them looking over at us, almost like the Rocky Ivan Drago moment where they look over and they're like, oh, this is going to be easy today. And, obviously we had that really difficult start. We hadn't really seen any video on them. We didn't have any scouting reports. It was just a completely different world.
I want to talk about MLS with you, but before I do, this is always a topic with guys that have been in the national team, because there are, like you said, the highs and the lows. There are the moments like 90 that you'll remember forever, and also the moments you'll remember like 94 and 98. How do you think missing those teams changed your mindset or the trajectory of your career? When you think back on those moments now with all this time to reflect, what jumps out to you?
Yeah, like I said, you look back at some moments and choices you made along the way. I chose in 1994 January not to sign with U.S. Soccer. All the players had signed who were staying in Mission Viejo had signed contracts with U.S. Soccer to step into Major League Soccer after the World Cup, which was at that time was supposed to start in 95 instead of 96. So that's a choice I made, and whether did it hurt me or not making the team, who knows? But leading up to that, I led the team in minutes in 93, and then I think I was part of 10 of 13 games leading up to 94, and then 1 week before, Bora calls me in his office and says, "Hey, Chris, I make my list and your name's not on it." And I was like, "Oh, how do we get it on it?"
Yeah.
And those moments, I think I had to reinvent myself, go to Germany and FSV Frankfurt and start over. And I think everything I went through as a player really set me up for my career now. And it's almost like this is the career I was meant to have. What I'm doing now post play. And all those preparations, being part of teams, new build outs, new ownership, new facilities, all the things I learned along the way have helped me tremendously now.
You know, one of those moments maybe when we realize the people we interview are better than us is 79 caps, but that was the preamble to his good career now. And we just host the podcast. So
Yeah, hey, you know,
there, Chris.
if we were giving out caps for the podcast, though,
Yeah,
I would
for
have
sure.
like 500.
We'd be
Yeah.
centennials. Yeah, for sure.
You'd have a Rolex or something.
Yeah, so, yeah, I wish. I'll dream about those days. But of course, you did end up in Major League Soccer in '96 until 2006, and it started with the Rapids. And we talked about that run with the '97 team. We've talked about the 2000 Wizards, and of course, we talked 2001 Fusion with Preki and some others there. I think Brian Dunseth too. Back to the Rapids, Mark Chung. He's been an underrated guy. I just want to try to get from you a little bit of a take here, and I want to know what the best team you played on is, because you were on a lot of good teams, championship winning teams that got to finals. For you in your MLS career, what's the best team you were on and why?
Wow, that's a good question. It's between the Fusion in 2001 and the Wizards in 2000. The Wizards team was a team that had something to prove. There was a lot of cast-offs who were on that team who had something to prove. Tony Miola, Kerry Zavagnin, Peter Vermes, Bunbury. You had Miklos Molnar, who came over, who played with me before in Germany, and Mo Johnston, Matt McEwen. It was a tough team to beat. Chris Klein, it was a really good team. And I think Gansler had something to prove as well in the way the team played. We ended up beating out for Supporters Shield by, I think it was goal difference, the Chicago Fire, who had a fantastic team. And we ended up facing them in MLS Cup Final 2, and they just pounded our goal. Tony played amazing. Miklos scored like he did every other game. And, Preki was fantastic that season too. He played such a good role within the group and the team. But the Miami team in 2001, the Supporters Shield winning team, played with so much flair. And when we had teams coming down to Miami, we knew that the last 20 minutes in the humidity, we were going to destroy them. We would keep the ball. Pineda Chacon was amazing his first year. Cerna up top was like a bull, just running over people. He's so powerful. And then Preki and I were both traded away from that KC team in 2000 and went to Miami. And we actually both scored against them in the conference final. So that was satisfying.
Did you celebrate? How did you celebrate?
Yeah, I ran over and I think I jumped on Jay Heaps and Preki and I ran to the stands. Yeah, it was a good feeling. And, Pablo Mastroeni was young. Yeah. Kyle Beckerman was just a kid.
Nicky was in goal, right?
Nicky was in goal. I don't want to forget so many. Carlos Yamosa.
Yeah.
So many good players. Rooney. So, that team was, and Ray is our coach. He just said, guys, let's have fun. Let's play. He knew the talent on the team and he knew the right buttons to push. And it was just a blast that year. I think we lost maybe 5 games the whole year, and it was a confidence in the team and the way we played that I would say there's an edge to that team. And obviously the next year we beat KC a couple times. But I would say that 2001 Fusion team's best team I played on.
Okay. 2001. Preki, by the way, was on this show, and he said he loved the team. He loved the flair. He didn't love the defensive side for 2000. But I think, what was his quote, Dave? He said, I wish people were a little bit more, was it committed? I don't know.
It doesn't matter. It's Preki.
It doesn't matter, because Brian Dunseth rolled on here after that.
All times.
And Brian was like, yeah, we had Hooters cards, if I remember.
Yeah.
Like, he said it was pretty wild down there. So 2001 Fusion is your choice.
Yeah, but 98 Galaxy team, if you're talking all-time teams, that team scored goals with ease. I mean, they were stacked. So, I do remember playing against that team. They destroyed our Colorado team, but that team was loaded too.
Okay.
Walk me through. Sorry, before we do this, Weeby. So we've been talking a lot about what are the different eras of MLS and how you break them up. And, in 96, there was such an infusion of talent off the bat of like, we have to make this work. Let's get big stars. Then it kind of seemed to have dwindled a little in the early 2000s. And then you have the Beckham era and all that stuff. Did it feel like from playing in the league that the league got better every single year? or was there a drop and then a gain again in the middle of that first 10, 15 years?
I think it was, I don't think there was like a steady gain. I think there was some years that were, hold on, my son is.
Hey, man.
You got the shirt that says family. So
Yeah, these kids. I know how it goes. These kids need that attention. They got nobody else to go to right now, Chris. So you got to be the playmate and the parent. I'm in those days too.
So I think the growth of the league is similar to the growth of a player. It's never like this. There's times where you go backwards to go forwards, and you go sideways. And I think there were some fantastic teams in the late 90s. And there was a lot less teams in the league. So the talent pool, you look at most of the U.S. national team players are in teams, and I think it's really balanced. And, now there's a lot more teams, and you have to use more players, and there's more foreign players coming all the time. But I think that, the talent on some of those early teams, some of the early DC United teams, Chicago Fire, the Galaxy early teams. I think the 98 team had Caligiuri played in the World Cup, Kobe Jones, Frazier, Vanny, Mathis, Ezra, Hartman, Reese, Kalishman. Guys who were players who played at the highest level, Cienfuegos, international players, and a balance of guys who were up and coming young stars. So there was a period, maybe I say it's maybe pre-internet, where, there was some years where we didn't know what was going to happen with the league. And there was some unstable periods where, 3 owners were owning most of the league. And teams were getting contracted. So that was a period of uncertainty, but I still think there was if you took 3 or 4 of the top teams, they could compete with any of the teams today.
So we have to make these decisions, and they're tough ones. What advice would you give us? Yeah, maybe, depending. We'll see who comes out on top. As long as we get the right team, all that matters is that final answer in so many ways, or at least that's what I'm telling myself. Like when you go back and look at some of these, because here are some of the games that we're going to have to figure out here today, some matchups, like 2013 Sporting Kansas City, 2005 New England Revolution, or 2003 San Jose, 2011 LA Galaxy. If you were doing this exercise on your own and you were pitting these teams together, how would you think about it? What advice would you have for us? What things should we value? What things should we sort of push away and say, okay, that's secondary? Are you rings culture? Is it all about the trophies only, or is it style of play and time? Like, how would you go about this?
Yeah, you know what? I would look through each team and find out, like, if there's a team that Landon Donovan was on, he made up for several players on a team, just in his ability, his winning mentality, his ability to change a game at any moment. So I think looking at the top players in each of those teams and the influence that they had on results, similar to the Chicago Fire team, Kubik and Novak, the ability for them to dictate the game and the way it was going to be played. And when they wanted to switch it on, boom, the team was up a goal or two because of the difference they made in the moment. So I would look at those things. And it's a little bit like, for me, like scouting players, like when you're trying to compare leagues, it's very difficult comparing teams as it is comparing leagues. How do you compare the Eredivisie to the Primera Division in Argentina? Like, being able to predict those things is difficult. So I think if you can get some of those maybe measurements and comparisons on players, individual players, that could help.
Who do you think we should end up with? What is the right answer to this question? At the end of this bracket, who is the greatest team in MLS history? Because you've either built teams that compete against the ones in the modern era here. You've played on great ones before that.
Well, hang on. He built some that are in this, too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
He can
yeah.
choose the Sounders team.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Well, I would say for sure in the conversation to be that 14 Sounders team, 2014 with
I love that team, the way they played.
Yeah, Oba, Clint, Evans, Pineda, Triori, Alonso, Marshall. You go through that team on and on. There's players, but the 99 DC United team with Pope and Yamosa and Agus and Echeverry, Moreno, I mean, that was an all-star team. It was, you know, you knew when you were going into RFK that it was going to be your toughest game of the year. Bruce Arena, you know, finds a way to get all his teams to win. So that Galaxy 98 team would be in the conversation for sure. The Fusion team, Supporter Shield winner in 01, but, you know, we didn't get past San Jose to get to MLS Cup. You guys have a tough job. It's a tough one.
I've been having trouble when I've been putting my votes on the Twitter polls. I'm like, I'm about to click this one, but no, I'm going to go to the other one. I can't quite wrap my head around some of the concepts.
Chris, I'll say you guys did a good job of making it a lot harder because we got a lot of love for the 2000 Chicago team as the best Chicago team. I think they would have been a high seed, except you guys beat them in MLS Cup final. So thank you for making that one a little bit more difficult for us.
Yeah. No, I do have a story. We played in 98, we played the Galaxy in the Rose Bowl. And, you know, they were a far superior team to our Colorado team at the time. And I'm sure they beat us by a couple goals. Kobe was on fire that year preparing for World Cup 98. And it was the first game after the 22-man roster was named for France 98. Sampson named the roster. And I was left out of the roster and disappointed, but, you know, the league goes on. So I'm playing the game, and there's a young player for the Galaxy. I'm not going to name who it is, but he was a young player who I thought, hey, this guy's pretty good. I want to go against him and see what he has, because I liked him as a player, and he was playing wide midfield. And I got on the field, started playing, and from like the first 5 minutes, he was talking smack, like it was like a NBA game. Like he's like, man, you're a total has-been. You just got cut from the World Cup team.
Wow,
and
he's really coming with it. Woo.
Yeah. And I was like, man, who is this guy? And he actually helped me for the next 3 or 4 years in the comments that were made during that game. And they destroyed us that day. And I was getting out of my mind, like I was going to, you know, do something stupid, you know, during the game. And just out of frustration, I think. But he drove me because I thought about, okay, I'm 27 years old and I'm a has-been. And then it drove me, you know, I got 2 Supporter Shield MLS Cup. You know, I led the team in scoring in one of those years. So it was great motivation. And I got back in the national team with Bruce in some of the qualifying for 02. So I thank that young player at the time for talking smack for 90 minutes.
You better believe, Chris, that we're going to be going through those old box scores
for sure
and figuring this out. If you think that's not what this show is all about, you are dead
We're getting
wrong.
emails.
Before we get to what you're doing now, there's one name that I've done so much research over the past 2 months, more than I've ever done before into the history of MLS, because that's what we have right now. You don't have the present, the urgency of the right now to distract you. And you have some good background with this guy. And I just want to know more about him as a player, because I can't find any highlights of Mark Chung anywhere. Like, I cannot find any way for me as a person who was not watching the league at that time to educate myself about Mark Chung. So give me like the 1-2 minute spiel, Mark Chung, so that everybody out there knows the name and knows who he was as a player. Because this guy made what? He made like 4 best 11s?
Yeah, Mark, first, besides the soccer, he's a fantastic guy. We were roommates on the road. He you know, now has his own business in the Jamaican beef patties, and he's a successful businessman. And he was always talking about stocks. We were watching the stock market all the time when we were together. And he had a sweet left foot. He had a cut move that he would use, super elusive on the dribble. He had a great mind for the game, reading the game. He'd show up on spots where he should be, and he scored, assisted. Yeah, I love playing with him. He was part of that group in Mission Viejo leading up to 94. We trained double days every day. He and Sorber roomed together for that period. And then, yeah, he was great on the early Kansas City teams. I had a chance to play with him in Colorado. He was one of the top left-footed players, I think, you know, of that whole decade. through the 90s and early 2000s. And he was consistent. He was a guy that you could rely on if you were going to have a team that was going to attack and go at teams, and having a smart player who's like a coach on the field. You wanted Mark Chung part of your group.
Who's your best roommate of all time?
I would say Robin Frazier. I loved rooming with Robin. He's got a great soccer mind. He's so chill. We had great conversations. He really helped me through some tough periods. And I would say he's the top, but I've had some good ones. Chungy was fantastic. I roomed with Preki on 2 different teams. God, I got to remember roommates. Tony Miola, I roomed with him for a bit.
Jeez, you got the legends coming out.
Rooming with a goalkeeper, I would pass on because their gloves stink. They're hanging everywhere. But yeah, I had some good roommates along the way.
That's good.
I'll just say this: the research has been done. 1998 Galaxy versus Rapids. I think I know what's going on. It's exactly who you guessed it would be. That's all. I'll just say that's why he's here.
Yeah, I was surprised, but he had a great career.
Let's finish up here with you, Chris. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here and helping give a little perspective to the decisions we're going to have to make after this. I'm just curious how your job has changed and how your perspective has changed in the middle of this sort of unprecedented event. You know, you're out scouting. You mentioned Argentina versus the Eredivisie versus, you know, I see you posting all those cryptic pictures all the time. Sometimes I drop in the DMs and try to guess. What's changed right now with what you do, how the organization is preparing and building and thinking about the first team and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed in the fact that when I came on in 2008, it was all about one team. You know, our first team. Obviously, now we have Tacoma Defiance and we have our academy system. It's just the club is much bigger than when I started. And, the majority of my work since 2008 has been the build out of the team, bringing the players in, trying to convince them to come to Seattle and MLS. As sporting director, I'm always looking at the short, medium, and long term. As opposed to, the coaches are focused on the short term for the most part. I still am working on, I have the scouting network, working on player acquisitions. I'll consult and advise with Garth and Brian, an overall philosophy and methodology of the club. And then, I think, just showing leadership in where the club is going and the pathway for young players to come through our club, because MLS teams need to have players coming through their own system. And that's going to be really important for us in the future, to be able to bring players through our system and have a pathway straight up to the first team. And I think that connection now, we have Danny Leva and some young players who are coming into our first team training every day. And that is a big step. And it's from being a, young player in my past history, I know how valuable that is and how much you can grow in those early years. So, right now through this period, it's watching players, watching video, being ready, going through our player profiles to make sure we have depth in every position of targets we're looking at. And then, figuring out, when can we do it? Are we able to bring players into the U.S.? And when will that happen? And so there's a lot of things that go into it. And then the salary cap is another issue, being able to find players who can fit into what we have available to spend.
I always say this is my last question, and then I always have one more, and that is the case this time.
It's fine.
As well.
I've got like 17 right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with these.
He is one of the most interesting people in MLS and one of the nicest.
So I want to know what signing when you think about all these signings back to 2008,
that's a good one.
What's the one that, whether it was kind of an under the radar one, you found this guy, or like a deal that got complicated, you didn't know it was going to happen, but it did get done, he made a huge impact. What's the one that you
watch highlights and you go, we nailed that? Yes,
that's one. The one that you were just like, bingo, boom. We got that. I'm proud of that. It's my favorite. Maybe it's an obscure one. I don't know. You define it how you want, Chris.
Yeah, that's hard. I would say Obafemi Martins was a big changer for us, and that was a hard signing. I think I flew to Spain over a 2-month period 3 different times, and to be able to get that over the finish line, he was fantastic for the club, super talented. Victor Rodriguez is another one who, we got him on a free, and to get a player that caliber, DP level caliber player on a free, it was great for the club, because the times you can do that, it just spreads the money out. It helps the team. But he was one of those guys who was playing in a low La Liga team. They were always defending and against the big clubs, and it wasn't really fitting for the way he played. And I thought, if we could take that guy and put him on a good team that keeps the ball, I think this guy could be really good. And his character was great. So I think he was a steal for us. There's other guys too that just, being able during that 2-year period to pick up Eddie Johnson, who was kind of he was kind of lost, looking to, for something and a way to prove himself. Rosales fell on our lap through just relationships. Most of these signings and bringing players in are relationships. And it's about, building trust with people, and you're hoping they're going to pick up the phone and call you guys first. And every club has their own relationships. We're all pretty much doing the same things, but I think we just want to try and be consistent and bring in, certain players who will fit into the way we want to play.
Well, that's
we like watching your teams play. So
yeah,
we appreciate everyone
Thanks.
you just named.
Appreciate the work being done there. Victor Rodriguez, that worked out pretty well for you in a final as well.
Yeah.
Chris Henderson, the vice president of soccer, he's the sporting director as well at Seattle Sounders, and of course had an amazing career himself on the field at the Rapids, the Wizards, the Fusion, the Rapids again, the Crew, and then the Red Bulls as well. We could have done this forever. We're buying you beers when we come to Seattle next time. Hopefully that is very, very soon, Chris. Thank you for your time, man. It's been a pleasure to chat.
Yeah, great talking to you guys. Stay healthy.
Big thanks to Chris Henderson for joining us. That was an absolute pleasure. One of the best guys in this league. Has an interesting career both on and off the field. Helped us get a little perspective here as we dig into the Discovery Rights region and the CCL region of the Extratime of all time bracket. We made our decisions last time. I feel pretty good about 90% of them. Still a little bit iffy on that 98 Fire versus 2018 Red Bulls. I think I made the right decision, but when Henderson talks about, Lubos Kubik and Novak as complete game changers, I get a little bit nervous, but we'll stick with it. You voted. You had 24 hours. Thank you to everybody who did it on Twitter. Remember, we'll keep pushing those out, so keep an eye there at Extratime. Go give us a follow so you know when the show comes out, but also to make sure you have your voices heard. The rules, in case you don't know them, very simple. 4 votes. We have 4. The fan vote has 1. So either you'll be a tiebreaker if you vote in those Twitter polls, or I'll be put on the spot, or Dave, or Kalen, or Doyle. I hope not me again. Let's jump into it. The number 1 seed, maybe overall, is 2019 LAFC. Only 65% of the vote. Somebody's trolling us here for the play-in, which was Charlie's.
That's all Charlie's bots.
I was going to say that's Charlie's. That's Charlie's movement.
2014 New England or 2015 Orlando got 35%. I think we just rubber stamped this. I don't think we discussed this one. Everybody knows how much we talked about 2019 LAFC and Vela and Bob and everything they'd accomplished last year, setting that point record. You're through 2019 LAFC. All good there. Here's where it gets interesting, because this was separated by 0.2%. The 4 seed, 2013 Sporting Kansas City versus the 2005, I should say, New England Revolution. The Revs in the fan vote, they won the vote, 50.1% to 49.9% for 2013 Sporting Kansas City. That 2005 Revs team, that's Twellman, that's Shalry, that's Ralston, that's Reese, on and on and on. 2013 Sporting Kansas City was a team that beat RSL in that frigid final. And you have, Beasler and Zusi and Dom Dwyer and Benny and Nielsen and Aurelien Collen, et cetera, et cetera. First impressions, did the fans get this right just barely? Is it that 05 New England team, of course, one of the 4 teams that lost an MLS Cup, or is it the Cup-winning Sporting KC team? Where do you stand?
Anybody got a take?
I would take the New England team. I mean, I played against both those teams, so the early days when I came in, I would go against those Revolution teams, and they were fantastic. And I think when you look at that kind of quality overall, because look, that team also had Michael Parkhurst, in the young Michael Parkhurst in the back. It had Jay Heaps, Matt Reese. I mean, that team was just
Clint
stacked.
Dempsey still.
Yeah, Dempsey coming in. That team was. It's funny because they, I think they're remembered more as closer to like the Buffalo Bills in a way, because they didn't end up winning, but that consistency. It was a team of winners. When you look at all those guys who played at that level, I think they just kind of had bad luck and came up against a Houston team that was just a notch better. But I think when you look at those sporting teams, excellent group. But I'm not even sure that 2013 team was the best sporting team of that era. I think they were resilient. They hung around, and I think the emergence of Dom Dwyer really pushed them over the top at times. But yeah, I don't know. Some of those earlier sporting teams I found with Kai and CJ, I think were dangerous in a different way. So if I were to pick between the two, it's close. I think the fans got it right as far as how close it is, but I think that I would go with the Revs team over Sporting.
You have to remember that Sporting team. I mean, Uri Rossell's in that team. He was very good that year, but is he better than Shawri? No. And you have to think of, Kai was gone, I believe, mid-season that year, was transferred. I think Roger left in that summer too. So you have two huge parts of what made this team so special not there.
Yeah, but what are we doing here? We said 2013 Sporting KC. We didn't say the team that played in the postseason, right? Like, you could be talking about a group where Kai's in and Dom's at his peak. Because we didn't really...
But you can't, because Dom wasn't at his peak when Kai was there. So those are two almost, in my mind, those aren't the same team. Those are different parts of that team, different times of that team. We make up these rules every single time.
I'm making them up right now. I'm going Charlie on you.
Are you going 2013 Sporting KC, Dave? Is that what you're saying right now?
No. I was just playing devil's advocate on that a little bit. We talked about this before the show. We were talking about errors and where teams sat. And while 2005 probably wasn't the peak of Major League Soccer, I came into this league watching that Revs team and the Dynamo teams that followed. And so I have a lot of respect for what they did, the way those teams were built. I think you guys mentioned with Parkhurst and all of this, the depth that those Revs teams had on top of the top end talent. And I think when you talk about spines, you're talking about some of the best in Major League Soccer, from Taylor all the way through to Matt Reese. So I appreciate those Revs teams. I think they could play a few different ways, even though maybe they're not known for that. And when you look at the ability to grind out results in big games and big moments, playoff games, obviously not cup finals, but those moments, I trust this Revs team. On the flip side for KC, I think Kalen just dunking on them because he beat them when he played in the day. So I think there was some residual there.
He beat a different team, though. You got to admit, the 2013 Kansas City team was very different from the 2011 and 12 team because of Dom and Benny, right? They felt at that point, 2013, like Sporting Kansas City was never going to get over that hump and beat Houston. But then late in the season, both Dom and Benny emerge. And suddenly at that time, you have one of the best number 10s in the league, and you have one of the best number 9s in the league. And then you add that on top of what was the best defense in the league. And like, even without Roger, that midfield was really good. We had a couple of overlapping fullbacks. I think it's really close. I think the fans were absolutely right that this is almost a coin flip. And you can't knock what the Revs accomplished from, the whole thing from 2002 to 2007, but really that 5, 6, 7 group, it still shocks me they didn't win more trophies. But that Sporting Kansas City team was legit. And I think if you had to put that Sporting Kansas City team up against that Revs team, there's no way that Revs back line handles the press. There's just no way. Sporting Kansas City's getting 3-4 goals just off of forcing mistakes out of that Revs back line. And I know that Parkhurst was awesome, but Parkhurst was a rookie in 2005. The other guys on that team, they were okay on that back line. But if you look at it.
We're talking about Avery John right now?
Yes.
Sorry, World Cup veteran Avery John?
Exactly. World Cup veteran. We'd be 1 year away from his World Cup appearance. I just think that stylistically the Sporting team would it would be a lot. It would be too much for that Revs team.
And to go to what Doyle's saying, what Sporting KC did in MLS because they were the first to high press and do that would be ×5 going back to 2005 and what the Revs had faced and what the league was at that time.
Yeah, but let's go back to the depth argument. Like, if we're playing a game here, we haven't even said the names Andy Dorman, Lorenowitz. We said Connell Smith, but we did not say Pat Noonan. I mean, my vote's going to go for the Revs. I think if these two teams played, I think the Revs win. And maybe that's just me, and maybe that's me trying to like push away from what everybody says is my Sporting Kansas City bias. But I think this Revs team, I think they can deal with it. I think that they have like the pieces, and if they have to go direct.
For the record, I hate both of these teams. It sounds like I only dislike this Sporting team, but those New England teams.
That's true.
With Chicago, everybody hated the Revs back then. So it was partly because they were so good. It was out of respect. And
by the way,
yeah,
the reason we haven't said Jeff Lorenowitz was because he played all of 1 minute that year, Weeby. So
no, Weeby switched the rules, so he gets Lorenowitz 2009 style on that team, but Kai and Dom can't play together.
You're trying to talk about a team where Kai and Dom never even played together. Like, Dom was out in Orlando.
The conversation is not pick one game that year and that lineup plays in this. It is that year, which, Weeby, to that SKC team's credit, they were able to get rid of two big players and still win MLS Cup.
No. It's
that's true. That is
my
true.
vote went to the Revs, though. So we've already made this decision. Kalen was on the Revs side, yeah.
Yes.
The fans by 0.2% were on the Revs side. And so the Revs, they're moving on.
I didn't actually vote for SKC. I was just making arguments.
Up the Revs.
Okay. This is a hard one too here, and the next matchup here is a 3 seed, 2008 Columbus Crew.
Weeby, you're never going to be allowed to go back home, by the way.
I know. 2002 LA. Well, I probably never will be able to go back home. So 2002 LA Galaxy, 47%. So the fans have voted. They say that 08 Columbus Crew team. By the way, both these teams coached by Siggy Schmidt, the legend. 08 Columbus Crew, you heard Henderson kind of run you through that roster. You're talking about obviously an MVP in GBS, Marshall, Hayduke. I mean, up and down that roster, they had quality. And then 2002 LA Galaxy was a great team as well, led by Carlos Ruiz. I'm going to go to you on this one, Doyle, to start out. Do you agree? Do you think that 08 Crew team, based on seeding, but based on everything they accomplished and is better than 02 Galaxy team, the team that made history there and won the first MLS Cup?
Yeah, I do. I think the fans were right to make it close. But if you look back at that 02 Galaxy team, they were just blood and guts on the back line, and then Carlos Ruiz, and hope to win by a goal. And Ruiz was amazing that year. And like the share of goals that he had both in the regular season and the playoffs and in the Open Cup, because that Galaxy team almost won the treble. So they were incredible, and they had this one very specific way to beat you, and they did it again and again and again, including on the road in MLS Cup. They played that cup at Foxborough in front of 62,000 Revs fans, and they won 1-0 on a Carlos Ruiz goal. But it was not. I think the Crew are just better. I think they just had more ways to do it, and even though they didn't have anything close to a Carlos Ruiz style assassin in the box, Eddie Gavin and Robbie Rogers on the wings. They had guys like Brad Evans in central midfield, Chad Marshall, who was incredible on set pieces at that point. He was maybe the best aerial threat I've ever seen in MLS, and this is before he got a couple of concussions. I just think that they had more firepower, and that at the center of it all was peak Scalotto. So I give a slight advantage to the 2008 Crew. And rest in peace, Siggy. I wish he was here to talk to us
to make this decision for us.
Yeah,
we talked to Chris Henderson a little bit about it before we got on with him, because Chris has worked with Siggy so long, and he said it was tough. When you look at it, you mentioned that Open Cup, like the Galaxy were a goal away from the first ever treble. On the flip side, Columbus did a double as well in 2008, and it's actually Columbus 02 who beat the Galaxy at Open Cup final. I love this Crew team, and I think when you look at Ziggy's teams and what they did, it was a lot of guys who were in the right roles. Not that Eddie Gavin is a world-class player, a best MLS player, but he had the exact role he needed to be successful. And you had peak Chad Marshall, and you had Brian Carroll battling in midfield, and you had GBS, who was in the exact right role he needed to pull the strings, create chances, and all of that. And they were head and shoulders above everyone else in 08, which is part of my comparison for this. Although the Galaxy were in 02 as well, and then fell apart the next year.
So the Galaxy, they were really good, but like you never got the feeling that they were overwhelmingly better than everybody else. Like it was just Ruiz was absolutely magical that year. And it was wild to watch him go to work. But it was never like, oh, man, this team is inevitable. With 2008 Crew, it would have been a genuine shock if anyone else had won. Genuine shock.
Here are the 5 players for that 2002 Galaxy team that played more than 2,000 minutes. And remember, different era, different number of matches. But Ezra Hendrickson, Danny Califf, Simon Elliott, and at the top, Alexi Lawless and Carlos Ruiz. Mm-hmm. Just interesting to go down that path. You have Sasha Victorine, Cienfuegos is obviously in this team as well, Tyrone Marshall, Kevin Hartman, Kobe Jones, but Kobe was preparing for that 2002 World Cup as well. Vahena, Smolin, I don't know.
Albright, young Chris Albright.
Young, yeah, under 1,000 minutes for him. I think I would lean toward that Crew team as well. It just felt like they had more ways. And look, Carlos Ruiz was a hell of a way to beat you, and he basically beat everybody that year because he scored 24 goals and then 8 in the postseason, plus the game winner to win the whole thing. So it's hard to vote against him, and I feel like he's gotten slighted throughout the Mount Rushmores and everything else for what he was in this league and what he represented. But I would have to go 08 Crew as well. But again, I question myself because that's one of the first formative teams that I watched in this league. I was obsessed with Guillermo, obsessed.
Kalen, you played against that Crew team in what was basically kind of a rivalry game with the Fire.
Yeah, I was offended by the fact that you said that you would be shocked if anybody beat
would have been shocked
because we went into Columbus to go to MLS Cup that year and they beat us and they overwhelmed us. I would say they had I remember the atmosphere at that game was insane at Crew Stadium. The fans were really behind them, but yeah, they had a really good blend of youth and experience. That would be the way I put it. If you look at some of the young guys they had, Robbie Rogers was impossible to deal with, just blazing pace. Chad Marshall, like you said, in the back was just a nightmare. I played against him since college, and then I got to the pros and I was like, man, I can't escape this guy. And he could turn and run too at that time. He's a lot quicker than people think, because later on obviously he basically just marshaled things around. That's a weird pun there, but so, and then you had GBS and maybe a little more scrappers up front, Moreno, these guys that were able to get goals, but they pretty much ran away with things when you didn't really realize it so much at the time, but they were dominant the entire season and then in MLS Cup. So I would go with Columbus Crew in this one.
I think we got the seeding correct. I think that's the there you go.
Fans, I think this is the tough. I think this is even tougher than the KC one. I think this is the toughest matchup on this side of the bracket. Really,
KC New England was a much tougher one.
Understood, but Doyle, you're talking about a Galaxy team that won Supporter Shield by six points, but they had 23 more points than the top team in the Eastern Conference, and they were plus 20 goal differential, and they were a goal away from a treble.
Yeah, and they were 13 points better than the top team in the Eastern Conference.
Quick math.
No, you're right. It was really good, but it was a down year in MLS. Whereas by 2008, the league had started coming out of that sort of. I mean, it was literally the contraction year, 2001 or 2002 rather. So I do think that while it's a good argument in what Pescadito did that year, and Alexi Lawless, because Alexi Lawless was incredible that season, it shouldn't go overlooked. But the Crew are just a better team. The Crew, and the one thing Pescadito did was get loose in the box and score clutch goals, which is great. But I don't have a ton of confidence in that against peak Chad Marshall. I just don't. Chad Marshall was that good.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. That's it.
Fair.
I'm looking back at this now. I'm looking back at this 2013 Sporting KC team and trying to reassess.
No. You can't finish the point. Matchup.
But here's what the difference is for me. New England had Taylor Twellman. Kansas City had half a season of Kai, just a little bit of Dom Dwyer, because remember, he wasn't doing any of that stuff in MLS until the very end of the year into the playoffs. Their top goal scorer was Claudio Bieler. So I think we made the right decision.
Designated player, Claudio Bieler.
Wait, yeah, that's true. Make sure you give him that DP in front of his name. So I feel better about that one now that I did the research. 98 DC United.
Now that I did the research.
Yeah, it was anecdotal before. Now I got some numbers behind me. 98 DC United's the 2 seed in this side of the bracket, 73% over 2015 Montreal. That's Didier Drogba's Montreal. Since we get to count him for the whole season, Piatti. I think the fan vote's pretty clear here. It's 98 DC United. If they played, maybe that's a slightly different story. But if you're talking about the greatest teams in MLS history, which I think I kind of lean back on when it all is said and done, like who occupies those places in the pantheon, it's got to be 98 DC. Anybody going to make a case for 2015 Montreal? Or are we going to just...
If they played, DC United would win 5-0. I mean, that DC United team was ridiculously good. And it wasn't just in MLS. Remember, the year before... Echeverry was the best player at Copa America. The year before, Echeverry led Bolivia to the final of Copa America, which is insane. Like, this is Bolivia going to, and this was during, the Aymar era, Argentina, and the Rivaldo era, Brazil. Like, he was at his absolute apex from 96 to 99. And I think this was his best year. DC United actually didn't win a title in the league, but then they played for the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which is a forerunner of the CCL. They won that one. And then they played in something called the Inter-America Cup, which was the CONCACAF Champions Cup winner against the Copa Libertadores winner. And that was the Juninho era Vasco da Gama team. And DC United beat them. DC United beat the Copa Libertadores winners in a game that meant something, in 2 games. So, that DC United team should be in contention right up to the very end as best MLS team of all time. And if you put them into a playoff bracket right now with Peake Eddie Pope, Carlos Llamosa, Jeff Agus, Tony Santa at right back, Moreno and Echeverry with Roy Lassiter running, just breaking every offside. Like, this team would be a nightmare to play against even today. So
I want to congratulate myself right now for inspiring that Doyle rant, which was,
you just got it riled up on a matchup that we already knew.
Yes, it was perfect.
But this Montreal team didn't do
podcasting.
bad. This Montreal team didn't do too bad in international competitions either.
For sure.
And this was also the year where they, I believe, mopped the floor with Toronto FC 3-0 at home. Didier Drogba in a one-off match. It's not going to be 5-0. That DC team would win, but Didier Drogba is going to get a goal or two. That is going to be.
I mean, Dilly Duca in a one-off match, right? These are the guys you're going to battle with.
But that TFC team was the one that would go on to become the TFC team that really defined the second half of a decade in MLS. And now you look at the year before, and they walked into Montreal in a one-off rivalry match, because I know it's Heineken Rivalry Week, and just completely got ran over but from the opening of the match to the very end. Montreal was the better team and just walked right over them.
Well, whatever. Continue.
Can we throw out Callum Malice and Cameron Porter reference here? I should probably just name my son Callum. My dad's name's Calvin. I could be like a shout out to him. It could be Cal and Cameron, and then we got that perfect CCL Montreal Impact connection. I have to think about this. Have to pitch this to Mindy. See if
I will say this.
Anders is mad at me for saying I defined the decade. He's like, they lost twice to the Sounders. That's how you know.
And they also started Amen Kantari, who I don't even remember, and Josh Williams at center back in that game. But continue. Sorry.
Okay. Look, we've gotten the Discovery Rights region. It's set. LAFC is taking on 2005 New England. And then 2008 Columbus will go to battle with 98 DC United. So we got some really juicy matchups coming. Let's get to the CCL
Who do you
region.
think Dempsey's going to elbow in the face in this matchup?
I think that's a topic for the next show.
Okay. I leave it.
I'm going to guess. No, I'm going to leave it. I wanted to guess. But yeah, then I got to thinking it was a good question.
We did trivia with Charlie last night, and Charlie, 17 weeks into us doing trivia, was like, hints don't count, change the rules, scoring changes, goes back, readjusts old scoring of past rounds. So now Weeby's here an hour into a show being like, actually, I'm just going to change everything we do. This is what happens.
This is what Extra Time has always been,
Yeah,
man.
what?
This is like the definition of the show.
This is a rigid show that stays on schedule, stays on track, has specific rules.
Well, let's
Team
bring in
chaos.
Anders to just laugh for 5 minutes about that.
Yeah.
Let's get to the CCL region. 97 DC United, 80% over the 2015 Vancouver Whitecaps that I remember vividly just dragging in our post-game shows because they had no interest in even playing in that postseason. So yeah, 97 DC United.
No, you're thinking of the wrong Vancouver team.
Yeah,
That was the
doesn't
other one.
matter. They're all the same, and they're all the same in my mind.
2015 Vancouver was actually out playing Portland before Kekuta Mane got hurt. But anyway,
Isn't this peak Pedro Morales?
I think it was 2016.
Pedro Morales
then was
2014. Yeah.
It all blends together for me. Sorry, Caps fans, for the slander. Either way, you're not moving on.
Wait,
DC
I have
United,
something
97.
to plug. I'm doing a new video series. It's called MLS Game Breakers, and our first episode a couple of weeks ago was on Alphonso Davies doing a little bit of tactical breakdown. Our second one is on Marco Echeverri. So a little bit of Caps, a little bit of DC United. For those of you who didn't get to see players like Echeverri or some of the greats of MLS past, we're going to be digging into that one as well. You can find it on my Twitter handle at MattDoyle76 and on MLSsoccer.com. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Oh, Kalen was proud of
done.
that one. You know, as a proud plugger.
You know,
Yeah,
I've
Kalen's
been
really-
envious over the years that everybody else has all this stuff to plug, and like I'm never really up for it. But here we go. So
Perfect.
That was
Well
well
done. So, okay, DC moves on. We know that. And this is an interesting one. 2003 San Jose MLS Cup winners. Landon Donovan, great team. D-Row, Joe Cannon, I want to say, was goalkeeper of the year maybe that year. 2011 LA Galaxy. That's, Beckham and second half Keane and Landon and Omar and on and on and on. 76% here. This is a 4 and 5 seed. I'm surprised that 2011 Galaxy got the 5 seed. Is this straightforward?
Are you surprised, Weeby? Have you been on this show over the past month?
Nah, I mean, I'm just filling time, all right?
Oh, God.
76%.
What was
said
the
fans
voting? 76%?
for the Galaxy.
That
for the
seems
Galaxy.
way high to me.
That seems very high to me, too. Does anybody feel that sure about this?
Kalen, what feels high to you on that?
Well, what do you mean?
Like, why is that so surprising?
Because, well, I've played against both teams. One when I was in college, albeit, but the 2003, I can't vote against this 2003 team. And I can't take my own emotions out of this thing because this 2011 team, I mean, yeah, they were an amazing team, but I also I don't see it as that big a difference when you look at that 2003 team in San Jose with Jeff Vegas and I believe it was Cannon in goal, and then they had Ching and Landon up front with D-Row coming off the bench. I believe.
Ronnie Eklund, throw his name in there for sure.
Richard Mulrooney. Yeah,
that team was really good. They won the Supporter Shield that year.
I don't think.
No, they did not. They did not win.
Yeah, they didn't win Supporter Shield.
They won the West.
Second. Yes.
They got knocked
overall,
out by an
West.
A-League team in Open Cup, and I don't think.
There's some good A-League teams in that generation.
Ching started about 14 games. He hadn't really broken through yet either.
Can you name that A-League team as the Sounders, man? Shout them out.
No, I'm just going to call it an A-League team. Let's see how that sits out there. I actually prefer that.
But also, this is the San Jose team. They beat that 03 Fire team
Agreed.
here, and that's a team that we've
I think
lionized as well.
Yeah, I think, Kalen, for me, that was the biggest part of they beat a really good team. They showed they could do it in big moments. But over the course of the season, for this Galaxy team to win Supporters Shield, and the other conversation is this is the one Beckham, Keane, Landon team that we have in there of like what they could do in a big moment. And
I'm
saw
happy
what
to
they
give
did
it
in
to them.
Cup
I just don't
finals.
see it as 76% to 23%. That seems like a huge gulf between those two sides, and that's the only part that I'm taking issue with.
I would agree with Kalen there. I thought that this was a little closer, but it's hard. It was hard to find reasons to put the 03 San Jose team over them, except for that they beat a really good Chicago team in the final.
I feel like that's been
Are you saying that? Are you saying that the
been a dig at the
2011
Dynamo.
Galaxy team didn't beat a good team in the final? Maybe?
No, I am saying that. And I'm saying it was a trash final as well. But if you had changed your starting formation and given Kalen a little more support, we'd be talking about 2011 Houston right now.
It was
I think the reason we remember it as a bad final is because only because Adam Crispin couldn't finish. Because I recently watched that game, and that was pretty one-sided. That LA Galaxy team did not play gorgeous soccer, but they played winning soccer. I think they set the league record for most amount of 1-goal wins. They have the best defense in the league over the past decade since that 2010 RSL team. They won the double. They almost 2 points per game. Donovan and Beckham were both best 11, as were Omar and De La Garza all year long. Sean Franklin was awesome that year too, and then they added Robbie Keane for the end of it. The only note is Keane didn't score in the playoffs. Keane did not score a goal in the playoffs. The only 2 Galaxy players who scored in the playoffs that year were Donovan and Mike McGee. Yeah.
Mike McGee scored in every round of the playoffs until the final.
Until the final.
Keane did have an assist in a big moment.
He didn't. No, I mean, not knocking Robbie Keane here. I'm just saying, like, they were so good, they didn't even need Robbie Keane to score over the 5 or 6 games that they played.
It was the best back line, I think, of that era, where you could, because AJ got moved around so much. Well, Leonardo, to me, is the worst starter in MLS Cup history, so I'm not even going to allow that space. And AJ got moved around so much because of needs and filling holes, but for that one to still have Donovan and have Sean Franklin playing at that level, it was big for them.
Yep.
Who was the second leading scorer on this team in the regular season? By the way, this Galaxy team, as we've kind of referenced, they were not an explosive team, and Robbie didn't get there. So if we were playing these crazy rules and we were saying it was like April Galaxy, I think 03 Quakes would have a great shout. But if we're talking about MLS Cup Galaxy, they move on. Second leading scorer, this will delight you, Kalen. Chad Barrett, 4 goals, 5 in all comps.
How many goals did Kalen have that year? Love to do that comp.
2011, I was concussed half the year. Couple in the playoffs.
Yeah. One in the playoffs, but
yeah.
All right. 2011 Galaxy. Moving on. Here's a 3-6. 2000 Chicago Fire against 2015 Portland Timbers. Timbers fans packed this vote because the 2015 Portland Timbers got 70% to the 2000 Chicago Fire's 30%. Are we going to flip this on its head?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Timbers, they had an awesome run, but they, like, in the middle of September, they were below the playoff line. They got hot. Caleb Porter did a good job to switch to a 4-3-3, brought Darlington Nagbe inside alongside Chara and Valeri, and they got hot. They won 4 out of 5 at the end, and they got the job done in the playoffs. But this is the same team that missed the playoffs in 2014 and missed the playoffs in 2016. Didn't win any other trophies around there. Well, whereas that Fire team was arguably a part of a dynasty. So, all due respect to the Timbers and their fans for turning out, but this is 2000 Fire.
Yep. I'm just going to
This is a Fire team that's brought Josh Wolf and DeMarcus Beasley off the bench versus a team that started Lucas Milano in a final. That alone is your argument.
So there's the gavel from Dave. We're moving on to 2000 Chicago Fire. Well done there. That was about as comprehensive as you could get in about 2 sentences. And then this one's a head scratcher. Here's 2018 Atlanta. We know they're going to make a long run here. 54%. 2019 Philadelphia Union, 46%. Their fans obviously voting. We thank you for your votes. We thank you for making your voices heard. I like that 2019 Philly team, but come on now. It's 2018 Atlanta. They're moving on. So out in that CCL region, we have got 97 DC United taking on the 2011 LA Galaxy. We've got 2000 Chicago Fire taking on 2018 Atlanta United. We'll tackle all of those next week. Before we get out of here, though, let's hit the mailbag, Dave. 401-206-0MLS, Extratime at MLSsoccer.com. What do we got in here?
Once again, the GOAT, David and Skokie, comes
Shout out to David.
again. He said that last week we were in the middle of our MLS Mount Rushmore debate. I don't think anyone even recalls that. And we said 4 spots were too few. We needed a Mount Olympus rather than just a Mount Rushmore. So here is your Mount Olympus. Zeus, the most valuable Olympian, deadly with the lightning bolt. That sounds like MVP award namesake. Landon Donovan. Hera, Zeus's wife, never gets the respect she deserves and often appears in the story only as the jealous afterthought of Zeus's philandering. That sounds like the fate of a Canadian soccer in the MLS world.
Wow,
never
that's spot
respected.
on.
So therefore, it's Dwayne De Rosario, Alexi Lawless literally doing, not putting him on his last week. Hades is the god of the underworld. Who better than Kyle Beckerman, all-time leader in fouls and yellow cards. Zeus's next brother, Poseidon, was god of the sea. While he had a thunderous personality and was known for creating storms, he was also a protector, particularly of those who lived at sea. That's 3-time Defender of the Year, owner of his own theorem, and crew and sounder legend, Chad Marshall. Aphrodite, goddess of beauty. Come on, David Beckham. Next question. Apollo and Artemis were twins and god and goddesses of the hunt. This calls to mind Fox in the Box strikers, goal poachers who know their job. Chris Wondolowski, all-time goal king, and Taylor Twellman. Your busts are ready. Ares, the god of war, needs skill, cunning, and an inability to ignore that periodic red mist. Hello, Marco El Diablo Echeverry, for your contributions to MLS's first dynasty, as well as your 4 minutes of World Cup action before being red carded home. Hephaestus, the god of the forge and fire, renowned for his skill in making the gods around him look good. That sounds like Jaime Moreno, who in addition to being one of only 200 goal and 100 assist guys, also picked up 6 red cards. Athena, goddess of wisdom, is represented by Eddie Pope. It wasn't just Pope's athleticism that made him great, his ability to read the game. Hestia was the oldest of the Olympians and goddess of hearth and home. That's our goalkeeper, Nick Raimondo, who played until he was 40. Guys, this keeps going.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, I would be proud to have written this column. Like, it would be my best piece of work the entire year.
Just cut and paste, Weeby. Cut and paste.
Hermes, the winged messenger of the gods, brings to mind a striker who could get in behind a defense, but Hermes is also the trickster god, the one who gave Pandora a shameful mind and deceitful nature, along with lies and crafty words. Who else? We're talking about Carlos Ruiz, who, like Hermes, also did a fair bit of traveling. Demeter, I don't know this one, the goddess of the earth and harvest, was seen as a seasonal figure. Who better than Miguel Almiron, who only stayed for a season or two, but brought the bread to Atlanta United. The last of the Olympians is Dionysus, the goddess of wine and parties. While neither of my two choices necessarily make the Olympus, for their in-game contribution, they both symbolize the growth of the league and the game in the U.S., and both are associated with parties. That is Alexi Lalas and Frankie Hayden.
That is a legendary mailbag contribution right there.
I would agree.
Yeah.
That's why David and Skokie is first on our Mount Olympus and the Zeus in our first on our Mount Rushmore and the Zeus in our Mount Olympus.
That was well done. I missed the second half, but I was reading through the whole thing. We have got the god of disappearing to take care of children. That would be me. Cameron is throwing a post-snap fit that is fit for the gods, they might say. Big thanks to Chris Henderson for joining us. Big thanks to you guys. I think now is a good time to wrap. We'll see you next week, everybody. Have a good weekend.